number 6 on the agenda. And
So the last meeting, we had some questions about some events that were going to take place in the park, and we were going over our rules and regulations. The committee agreed at that point not to make any decisions. They wanted a workshop with the county attorney and the park committee to go over the rules and regulations. Well, shortly after that, Mr. Phillips became sick and passed away. Then we had to replace him, and we've had Alan quite busy with a lot of things because we were backlogged during this whole time. We didn't have an attorney. So today, we called the meeting to go over some of those rules and regulations for the park. You have in front of you our current rules and regulations. So on this sheet here, there were also, I found some bylaws of Laurel Run Park, but they seem to be outdated. I couldn't find where these were ever adopted by the full commission, so don't know if these are even valid. I just found these in the park files. So you might want to make bylaws, or you might just want to stick with the simple rule. If someone rents a shelter at Laurel Run Park or reserves a shelter, we give them a copy of these rules to go by. That way they know what they can and cannot do when they get there. The thing that we had the question on is allowing people to have organized fundraisers and events in the park. So Mr. Kappa's here to let you know what we would need. Alan, do you have a copy of what we had presented last time? Do you have that with you?
I have the fund rules, that's all I have.
Okay, the email that I sent.
I don't think.
Okay, I can go get that.
Obviously, you can establish whatever rules you choose to do. It may be premature to do it now because if you consider to go forward, forward with the natural area, that will obviously be much different than if you have a normal park situation. There are ways to categorize the type of activities we're probably trying to prohibit. One is to say, give a definition of commercial activity or commercialization, and conclude that in a broad enough definition to include things like car shows. Right? You can include other things in there that would disrupt the normal flow of the park. My understanding is that we do most of the community, local birthday rentals for shelters, that type of thing. And that there are some people looking to expand the type of events they have there. I guess I would take some direction from you folks as far as what the type of events you do not want to see there. And then certainly it can be drafted up legally that those would not be permitted. But that's a decision for the committee and then the commission to make.
So at our last meeting, Mr. Phillips had prepared a replacement of one of the rules, and he wanted to remove the line that said no solicitations are to take place in the park, and he wanted to add no solicitations or payments required shall take place either prior on or the day of an event in the park in any manner whatsoever. And he wanted to add no food trucks or catering or any kind allowed in the park at any time.
Again, that's the type of thing you would include in this definition I'm talking about of what you could allow. Within generally in the state regulations is a very, very broad definition of commercialization I put up today, but it includes a lot of these things you're talking about. I don't know if I can lay hands on it quick enough, but let me see. This is one's prohibiting commercial park activity, means any activity involving any commercial or business purpose within the state park. This is again for their facilities, park visitors or park staff, including but not limited to any recreational activity in the state park that is packaged and sold as a service organization or an individual other than the Department of Commerce. Park activity does not include commercial whitewater rafting services, which they have a special exception for. But if we made a broad definition of what commercialization, commercial activity is, I think then we can do it. Because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep the character of the park. And we're saying it's starting to look like it's changing because of the type of activities. I think the one in question was it not a car show with
It was a
selling of T-shirts and other things?
Food truck vendors.
And then, an entrance fee maybe that day, whatever. But this could be taken care of. It's just that I want to try to come up with a definition that does more than just say no car shows, because we'll get somebody else to come up with something else.
Right.
If we come up with a broad enough definition of the type of activity you do not want to see at the park. And that's again coming back to what you feel that park should represent to the county and to the families and people who use it.
Mr. Cap, if I may, let me ask you a question. If a person, let's say a person wants to have car show there, and they fill out an application, and according to the bylaws that we're under now, it would be, let's say, it's permissible. Okay, if we put restrictions on it, what would happen to that person that's turned in an application prior to the
Previously?
changes?
I guess you could say that that's a legal argument you can make back and forth. Should it be grandfathered or should not be? You can make your resolution saying it's retroactive back, so far, but I guess at this point I would, until you make what you do want, I would avoid that. Simply, put a moratorium on those type of activities that you are going to decide about in the future. It's no different than sometimes when you're thinking about what kind of alcohol you may have distributed. You can sometimes put a moratorium on accepting applications for those, and then go ahead and come up with your rules and regulations. But I don't know what to tell you as far as whether somebody can try to uphold your issue of the permit. The best thing is not issue the permit, okay, for the activity. But are there some other activities that the committee has in mind that would be, you don't think, in the nature of what you'll open the park to present?
I think if you go back to what you just talked about being a nature area, that pretty much sets the tone for what you want the park to be. You don't want it to be a carnival atmosphere. You don't want it to be a car show atmosphere, a fundraising type thing. It's a natural park. It's not meant to be that. That's just my opinion.
This article here, I printed off today, says the difference between a park, this happens to be down in Chattanooga, but they made a thing of parks versus nature preserves. And they go through and they discuss type of things. Parks are purchased for development of active recreation purposes such as ball fields, trails, water parks, playgrounds. Natural areas of protect and manage natural features, conserve a watershed, enhance water quality, provide habitat. Okay, preserve a historic place. Activities, you may have softball leagues, soccer leagues, skateboarding, swimming classes, whatever in the park, but in the passive recreation such as hiking, bird watching, walking your dog, workmanship, they would remove invasive plants, restore native habitats, versus perhaps have an after-school program, or you could let somebody have yoga classes there. So we need to come up with some kind of model of what we want the park to offer to the citizens, and especially the county, and then go from there to tailor what you can do.
So to me, it sounds like, as far as parks in general, there's all kinds of parks where you can go to playgrounds, you can have car shows, you can have music shows, things like that. But what we have basically is similar to what Mr. Week talked about, and there are not that many of those.
So what do you allow in Bays Mountain?
In terms of commercial activity,
Yeah, in terms of what we were just talking about.
commercial activity in Bays Mountain you have to have a permit approved by the city manager, I believe is the process. We don't really do any commercial activity though. Bays Mountain, he read the difference between a park and a nature preserve, so we call ourselves Bays Mountain Park, but legally in the city code of the city of Kingsport, it's designated as a nature preserve, and there are 14 purposes in the city charter that Bays Mountain is allowed to be used for, and they all align with what a nature preserve would be. So we call ourselves a park because that's what everybody else calls us, but legally it's a nature preserve. So it's set aside for those passive recreation uses.
So you said 14.
Uh-huh.
Can you provide that with Mr. Cal? Or
Yeah.
the rest of us? So,
I can read it to you if you
okay,
want.
go ahead.
Get it pulled up here.
And think about the difference between maybe Rogersville City Park, Mount Carmel City Park, where there are concerts, there are activities that, you know, are more commercial based than what we would have at Laurel Run. So it's not like if we told them they couldn't do it there that we're, you know, saying there's nowhere else to do it. I think there are plenty of places to have park activities versus preserve activities.
And we also have, don't forget about St. Clair Park.
Right.
We have St. Clair Park that we can have activities such as car shows that doesn't have the natural nature that Laurel Run offers. You can have two different sets of rules and regulations for those parks, possibly.
What's the,
Yeah, sorry, it's in our code of ordinances. I'm pulling it up. It's chapter 66. So, chapter 66, Bays Mountain Nature Preserve. In order to secure the benefits of an enduring educational resource, Bays Mountain Park shall be held in trust for the following uses and purposes. Purpose 1, for scientific research in such fields as ecology, forestry, agriculture, so on and so forth. Purpose 2, for the teaching of biology, natural history, ecology, conservation, environmental education. Purpose 3, as habitat for plants and animals. Purpose 4, as a place of natural interest and beauty. Purpose 5, as a living illustration of our natural heritage wherein one may observe and experience natural animals and environmental systems of the earth. Purpose 6, to promote understanding and appreciation of the aesthetic, cultural, scientific, and spiritual values of such an area. Purpose 7, for the preservation and protection of a nature preserve against unnecessary modification as a result of occupation, development, or other use. Purpose 8, as an illustration of the cultural history of the region. Oh, there's only 8. I thought there were 14. There's 8 of them. There's 14
I'll
of
make
something
that
else.
correction.
There's 14 of something else. There's 8 of those purposes. And so we use those. I mean, they're in the city charter. And so whenever we're looking for, well, should we use Bays Mountain for this? I mean, that's something to rely back on, like the attorney was saying. You know, you set the mission of the park and then you go back to everything you want to do. Does it align with that or not?
So what have we done, if anything, in St. Clair
As in,
Park? St. Clair Park.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. What have we
Well,
done, if anything?
Years ago, a couple years ago, we talked about pickleball and all that stuff at our parks.
We got the court set up for pickleball. It's lined up.
St. Clair?
Mhm.
Okay.
what's the thoughts of the committee?
That's the question.
Well, okay, I guess, to me, do we want to align or to look into, having Mr. Cap look over and consider rules and regulations based on a natural area? Or do we want Mr. Cap to base rules and regulations based off of a park? I guess that's the two paths, two options we've got. Sounds like, and y'all, disagree, but it sounds like we want to at least check out the natural side of it.
I may add, correct me, by pursuing that course, if you decide you didn't want to go that way in a formal state recognition, you would still have the option of deciding for the county's purposes that you're going to have more one-way natural or the other way. You'd still have that option, I believe.
Yeah. The state designation is again more of a resource to help you, not any sort of restriction.
But you would still have that option of coming back and saying, if you wanted it to be one of those things where there's more of a nature-oriented, I think you could still do that very easily.
Okay.
So it's not either one or the other, I guess what I'm saying is you could mix them up, but you want to.
I mean, you can still have the weddings and the kids' playground. And,
We have that.
Yeah.
We have that.
Yeah, the natural area is not gonna affect the part that's already developed.
right.
But we still need some clear guidelines on
Yes.
the rules
We do.
in the developed area.
Mm-hmm. In other words, we just can't go up there and tiptoe through the tulips.
Mr. Young,
Yes, sir.
the question for you. The Jeep show, which I'm assuming the Jeep show was held up there, how did that work out? How did that, pros, cons?
That day, it was a rainy day. I had no problem with it. I mean, the only thing I did ask them to turn the music down, but other than that, we didn't have any problem. The only reason I think that this discussion is even coming up is for me. I just need, a guideline somewhere, because now we've got more people asking if they can have stuff at the park now to sell merchandise and to do different things. In the past, we've never done that. The only thing I need from you all is just, clarification as to what rules that I need to enforce, and I will carry, those out to the best of my ability. But right now, before, pretty much I just said, no exchanging money in the parks or anything, like that, and I've never had any problem with it. We had this one event, come up, not saying good or bad or whatever, but, for me, I just need clarification on which direction we want to go and try to treat, everybody the same.
Okay. What's the recommendation of the committee? If we've got people that's applying, do we put a moratorium on it and say, can't do it, cancel it out, make other plans, or do we let it continue as is, or, kind of, what's everybody think?
People go to the park to relax.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be bothered with solicitors. That's just my opinion.
Well, if you start that thing, your park, that park's gonna be commercialized. And that park's much too, what am I trying to say? It just doesn't need to be having people in there selling stuff and we took a class up there last year. We took the whole school to different parks. Those kids had them all up there. They had classroom activities out there. They taught them things. And if you start getting commercialized, you're gonna take all that away. It's not gonna be, you're gonna have too many people in there wanting to sell and have events for these kids not to be able to get in there when they need to.
People want to hear the birds. They don't want to hear motors. They don't want to hear hot rod motors. They
Yeah.
want to hear the birds.
Yeah, that's it.
And also, the way I see it, we're gonna have a new park in Churchill. We got the Rogersville Park open to all kind of venues. And it's not like they don't have anywhere else to have the events. They've got a dozen options. We've got, 11, 12 parks in Hawkins County. So.
And two, the parking and everything can all run somewhat
Yeah.
limited.
Yeah.
Okay. Would anybody that's on the committee consider making a motion or a motion to put a moratorium on car shows, soliciting, things like that?
I think if you take Mr. Couch's advice, you would lump all that under a commercial activities kind of a umbrella. And you've got a good set of rules to start with. It's just a matter of, defining what the commercial activities might be and restricting that from use in the park kind of thing. We may be making too much out of it, like Johnny said, he needs something to go by. And there's some rules, good rules here. You might want to take it and give it some more thought before another meeting or workshop or whatever, and let Mr. Cout decide, kind of put some things under a, banning commercial activities kind of umbrella. And list some things under that, and it wouldn't be all inclusive, but will give us some idea of what can't be done in the park.
I make a motion that we let Mr. Cout do what he said.
Okay.
What he said.
Okay.
Minutes, I really need a better motion.
Let me make it for you get credit for it, and I may not have it all. I'll make a motion, we allow Chairman, Mr. Young, and Mr. Capps, and Mr. DeWitt have a working session and then work out some rules and regulations on the park and bring those, that recommendation, whatever they decide, back to this committee sometime
I
in the
second
future.
that. You said it better than I did.
Well, I'm not usually, I'm not a good talker. And in the meantime, we put a moratorium on use of the park.
Or commercial.
What you, commercial. Use.
I'm sorry, you have a motion, so I'll go ahead and vote on. I'll reject my thought there.
Okay.
Are you gonna put a time limit maybe when we come back to look at this,
Don't tell me.
sir?
Tell me, I don't know. What sounds reasonable, Mr. David?
Well, I'd give it
30 days?
I'd give it 60 days or so.
60 days?
If that's suitable for Mr. Camp, I'm available. As long as I can get to the office, I'm available. And Jeff, you're pretty much
I'm
up.
pretty much free, so
Okay.
I personally would defer my time schedule by Mr. Cap,
Yeah.
for the most part.
To get something just to, in case we can always just adapt those or add to those present rules fairly quickly, and then we can spread out later on, perhaps, when you guys have decided more of what goals of the park, that's up to be. I don't think that'd be a reasonable time frame.
Okay. Got a motion on the floor and a second. Which I guess we've already had the discussion pretty much on it. Ms. Davis, could we do a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Danny Ellis,
Yes.
Linda Davis,
Yes.
Silva Von Trier,
Yes.
Larry Lawrence,
Yes.
Jeff Barrett,
Yes.
Jimmy Riley,
Yes.
Shepherd,
Yes.
unanimous, motion carries.
What I was going to ask was, is the right now, do we have any kind of a limit on the number of people we allow in the park? I mean, so,
We don't.
I'm just curious from the standpoint of if that's a consideration also with some events. So there's not been a problem, I guess, but.
We've actually had to park till there's nowhere left to park in some time. I mean,